Recording. Today's agenda is displayed. Oh, I didn't say that. I should probably do that. And should look pretty much like what I sent out to you earlier. In the agenda, the first item is news from Libline. And I just wanted to let you know a couple of things that are going on. One is that you probably saw, if you are on Waldo's support, the email that Jane sent out yesterday saying that there would be a new point release added to production servers tonight, starting about 10 p.m. Eastern Time. Okay, the next sentence that she states here is that there will be no major service interruption, but they have to restart all services. Okay, so if you notice problems when you come to work in the morning, or if you are still working when they do the upgrade and the restarting all of the services, if you have problems, send a support center ticket as soon as possible. I remember the last time when they were putting 6.00.15 into production, and the next morning as I logged in later that day, I saw that there was a lot of trouble in that particular, with that particular point release. One question you probably will have is what's included in this point release, and we'll get to that a little bit farther along on the agenda. I have added these. There are actually 2 point releases that are being installed, 6.0016 and 6.0017, and I'll show you that in just a little bit. Anyway, the other news from Libline is that I asked Patrick during our call yesterday what he and Clay thought about the changes that Ben very kindly demonstrated for us at our previous meeting. And Clay had sent a chat message saying that he was impressed with what University of Hartford staff had been able to do. And in fact, Patrick confirmed the same thing and also told me that they were looking at a couple of the enhancements and what they could do in the current version of the software that might help send some of these sooner into production rather than later. One of the things that he did discuss was the facets piece, and I'm going to scroll down to where I put the enhancements, and in the facets, the show more that Ben had showed us, it looked really nice, it looked really slick, and Patrick told me that they have done work on the enhanced facets. So I thought I would let you know that that's there. And if you remember what Ben showed you, you can compare what is there. The enhanced facets are described in section 2.4.4 in the user manual. And there is a little bit of setup that you need to do for it. So I want to show that to you before we go into the enhancements themselves. When you go into the system as a patron or as a staff member, you need to go to My Dashboard, and they'll go down to My General Preferences. And there is a search behavior here that says Advanced Facets. In order to turn this on for your use in the system, you have to make sure that this is checked, that this check mark is here. When it is comes to you, the check mark isn't there, and it just says that the role default is disabled. In other words, you can't use it. So in order to use it, you have to have that check mark in the box. When you go to use it, I'm going to use a very broad search. When I do my search and it comes back, you'll see that there are some additions to the facets that weren't there before. There are checkboxes in front of each of the facets that are displayed. Supposedly, then, you can set that via the user roles. I haven't tried it. I've only done the testing with my own patron record. You'll see that there, in addition to the checkboxes, there's an X. Okay, the difference between the checkbox and the X, if you put something in the checkbox, if you click on the checkbox and there's a check mark, it means that that's going to be your limiter that you're going to be using. If you click on the X, it's going to change display so that it is an X in a white circle, and that means that that's going to act as a not. So you can do either any or all. So you can do either Boolean operator. And the other condition that I found is that it works only with one facet at a time. So if I wanted to find everything that was at Mortensen and in the topic, they had to identify both music and motion pictures. Oops, I want to make it like this. And then, because I started with my check marks and topic, there's now a green search bar. Yes, I know, Ben. It takes a little bit of practice to figure out how this is working, even with the information in the user manual. But you will see then that our history is limited to just in the topics, and that's why I chose the topics first. Wanted to show you that it's not going to show me the items that are at Mortensen. And you can see as I scroll down that it says it's at Waldo MMM main stacks all the way through. So it didn't pick up on that particular filter that I wanted to select. But then you can go back and you can start and choose other options if you want to do that. This is just sort of an aside. This is one of the enhancements that showed up in, I think it was 6.00.14 point release. So it's been in your production system for probably about a month now. And if you didn't actually pick up on that particular entry in the release notes, you probably didn't even notice that there was something different, because there is a step that you have to physically take in order to see the enhanced facets information. But it would be interesting to get your feedback on how you would use this, if you would use this, and if you think the libline created one, libline created facets enhancements is more to your liking than on the more than the Hartford enhancement. But that'll take a little bit of time, I think, for you to work with it and see. And of course, to test the Hartford enhancement, all you have to do is go to the Hartford's catalog and it will be available to you. Ben has put in the chat message while we're talking about this, that Jim has one of the University of Hartford features mostly installed in the Waldo database. So I'm going to click on what he has here. Okay, and this is where he has the pagination at the top of the page. Correct, Ben?
Hi, Becky. Actually,
Yeah.
we're trying to set it up with just the more with the or facets feature on this. Jim found that rather than trying to subtract the code from from Hartford, it was easier for him to copy all the code and put it into Waldo.Waldo and then subtract out all the stuff that didn't have to do with the one particular feature that it was working on. So I'm guessing that the pagination at the top of the screen is part of the code that he hasn't worked out of it yet. The idea, the philosophy is that we're going to try and come up with a way of parsing out each one of these things so that if another Waldo institution wants to use this, they can just grab that section, dump it into the code, and away you go.
Okay. Okay, that sounds great.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. The address that I used, that Jim and Ben and I have shown you here, is waldo.waldo.kohalibrary.com. This is actually, it is a Waldo sandbox, but it is a production Waldo database. So it is basically vanilla Koha with the University of Hartford features that are being added in, as you can see. And you can go and you can look at it. I don't think that you'll be able to log on because I don't have the logon set up the same way as I do on the sandbox itself. So be aware that that's something that you can go to and you can search through the database and you can look at the different features. That, Yasmin, that is the question that Ben and I have discussed, and that Ben has discussed with Patrick, and that I have discussed with Patrick, because we don't want to have something out there and then let it break with the new version. And that is something that Patrick is going to be talking to Clay about tomorrow. Patrick has reiterated that they set up the discovery layer so people could do their own customizations and so that they could share bits of code. But they recognize that it isn't quite like sharing an SQL request. With SQL, if you are using codes, of course, you have to modify the codes. But they recognize that this is a little bit more intricate and something that they'll have to keep in mind as they move forward. But in Patrick's meeting with Clay tomorrow, the one area that they're going to look at, as Patrick told me yesterday, is the course reserves enhancement. As they were watching the demo that Ben was doing last week, they saw the slight response time glitch. Well, not a glitch, but the repainting of the screen took a little bit more time, and it was noticeable in course reserves. And that was something that Clay thought that they could probably resolve pretty quickly. So that might be one of the first things that we could see, that we may see included in the base product. And in that case, some of the discussion that we had is that Clay suggested there might be a system preference where you would choose which course reserves you were using, either the LibLine or the enhanced University of Hartford. But that's all in discussion right now. We don't know for certain how things are going to happen, but that is something that is being discussed right now.
Hi, Becky.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm actually hoping that they can do it for more than just the course reserves. It's an underlying problem throughout our webpage. It's just the best example that I could show was with course reserves.
Sure.
Because it's really pronounced when it loads through there.
I think that they will be looking at that because I think that Clay even mentioned that there were a couple of places that that it was noticeable to him. So we'll keep going. I am encouraged that Patrick is talking with Clay about it tomorrow in their weekly meeting, so that it was a good demo, and it's a good thing that we did that. Okay. I did send out a document to you that was a list of the University of Hartford Bibliovation enhancements for the discovery layer. And from the comments that you had entered into the chat during the last meeting, I went through and picked out when I asked what the top 3 enhancements were on this list that you wanted to see added. I went back and pulled out what you said, and I actually tried to get the names as close to what you call yourselves. So one thing that I noticed is that when I scroll through this, you'll notice that the red type is where people are interested in having that. But there were several where there were multiple libraries that wanted to have that feature. And there were there were only 4 that didn't get any selection from any library at this point in time. Of course, there were a couple of people that added in after they had put in their suggestions that they would like to see all of them. So in that sense, I guess all of them were actually worked on. I didn't do any kind of a sorting on which had more libraries that identified it as an enhancement that they would like to see. I think that the intent actually is that if we have to choose, we'll have some information to go on, and without having to ask you again for it. Ben, I hate to tell you this, but Patrick has no love for that cascading headings either. So
part of me understands that because they've worked so hard on trying to link subject headings and authorized headings to authority records.
Right.
But no, the cascading headings thing is just absolutely phenomenal, and I don't know why that's not. All right. Well, just imagine I put a rant in here.
Okay.
Thank you.
So noted. So we'll keep coming back to this discovery layer enhancements piece as time goes on after we get more information back from LibLine. And Ben, did you send the information to Patrick already that he had mentioned that he would like to see?
That's for the more with the or for facets.
I think it was the facets one.
Yeah, that's why we started working on that first in Waldo, Waldo, so they could see it. I should mention that Patrick and I talked a little bit afterwards, and he was muted during, as you know, we all were. but I hadn't realized that it was muted. And so he had quite a bit of really good feedback during the call that no one heard. And one of the last things that he realized at the end that that he was muted and managed to type in, go ahead and write up the whole facets thing. And that's, he also stated that, LibLime has always been in favor of sharing enhancements that one institution has developed throughout the rest of the institutions, and it's still sort of, if not necessarily an open source product, and definitely a community built project, and then he's always going to encourage that. So it's not quite the same as, University of Hartford is going to take this code, write it up, and then hand it off to LibLime to be included in the code for everybody, at least not at this point. Well, not for everything. I'm hoping for everything.
Yeah. Well, we'll keep talking about it, and I'll keep asking about it during the calls with Patrick in each week.
Thank you, Becky.
Because I want to know that they're at least considering the things that have been done by your staff.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Okay, so just to tick these off, news from LibLime, we've done the enhanced facets I've showed you, and I've showed you the results from the discovery layer enhancements that came from the meeting from the last meeting. I wondered if there were any other comments that anybody wanted to make about those enhancements. I see that, Yasmin, you did put something in chat. But of those of you who were either at the meeting or looked at the video, do you have any other comments that you want to add about this? We, meaning Ben and I both, because Ben, as the person who knows more about the coding part than I do, he can always explain things a little bit better on what they've done than I can. So if there's any comments, now's the time to bring them up. Okay, I don't see anybody typing anything or anybody unmuted. Let's go on. I did send a couple of documents along with this agenda. The first one I want to talk a little bit about are the system preferences one. We talked about this 2 meetings ago, I believe, and I said I was going to send it out, and I think I forgot to send it out. So that's why I sent it today. If I did send it out earlier, you now have a second copy. So if you lose it, you'll have a little bit better chance of finding it. And the other document that I sent was the startings of the granular permissions. What I did, or how far I got with this, is I was able to go through the release notes and find anything that was listed in the release notes as a new granular permission. I have not yet been able to get to the list that I had compiled at the very beginning of the Code Fusion project that listed what was in the version, I think it was 5.18 at that time, of LAK against what we have now in Bibliovation 6.00.15, soon to be 17. So these are the new heading or the new authorizations that are there. And I also identified that I found some that they have removed. Actually, I think what they've done is they've replaced some of these with other authorizations up above. So it's not the functionality or anything. They just changed the authorizations for them. I do want to go through the rest of the exercise to see if there are any that are sort of changes that we have not noticed yet. I noticed that in the release notes, there were a couple of references to permissions, and those always make me sort of perk my ears up and make my eyes open a little wider, because those are things that we need to know about. And if it's something that specifically affects day-to-day operations, I really do think it's better that you know about them than have to go through the agony of doing a support center request and then have to come back and change something that should have been already taken care of because you were able to do something earlier. So anyway, this will change a little bit, I think, the next time that you see it, but I thought it would be useful for you to at least know which things have been added. And if there are any comments or questions, just feel free to send them to Waldo Support, and I'll get to those. Okay, the next thing that I want to talk a little bit about are the enhancement, are the release notes. You'll notice on the tabs down here that there is no 6.00.15. That's because when they added the point release last time into the production site, what they did is they changed the version number to 6.00.15, but there really were no fixes or enhancements or new items that actually bear that particular number. So don't let that trip you up there. So I went through the new release notes. The release notes address is on the meeting page, so you can get to the whole list. It's like 45 or 46 pages long now. So this will give you a good overview of what is in the different, or what is in the two releases that are going to be added into production tonight, which is, to me, a little bit of a gamble, but I hope that actually works well this time. As I went through these and read through them, there were a few things that that I noted that were Waldo enhancements, and because I didn't mark them, I can't remember for certain which ones they are. But this one I did notice, line number 13, the granular permission for offline circ was not working for staff with limited rights. Now, I don't know if any of you ran into that. I suspect that that was one of the other sites, either South Central or one of the government sites that noticed that. But if it's one of yours, you'll be anxious, I would suspect, tomorrow after you get started on your day to check that to make sure it's working correctly. I noticed that there were a lot of hold fixes that are in this particular bunch, and there was nothing that I thought was really noteworthy for the Waldo libraries. Let me see, there was one, sorry, I'm moving windows around. So the availability facet that is in the facets, which right now use the on-shelf at index, includes not for loan items. So there was a new index that was created called For Loan At, so that you can use either of those indexes for faceting. And this, I believe, is something that was added for South Central. I'm not sure that there are enough branches at any of your libraries that it would be critical to have this particular one changed in your facets, in your system preferences. There is a new note in the user manual, and there was a note that was included on this saying that if you use this, it will require reindexing. So the point release itself, when it's installed, will not require reindexing. It will require restarting the servers, which is a pretty quick process. So if you do choose to change your facet and use the new option, you'll need to remember that you need to have the system, your system reindexed. And in order to get the reindexing done, you'll need to schedule it through the support center. Okay, in the 6.0017, there were only 7 things that were there, and they were all fixes. I should have pointed out on the 6.00.16 page that there were some that were identified as a new feature, but again, this one was primarily added because of the public libraries and specifically South Central Library System. And again, the enhancement. Actually, this one, Ben, you might want to take a look at. I think that what they did is that would be useful would be the 0-day scrubbing. If you set your preference to 0 days for scrubbing, I think that it was skipping all of those. I think now it will take those into consideration as well. Eventually, they will be doing reindexing. I think it will be in conjunction with the release of 6.02. Okay, good, Ben. Oh, and if you notice things are not being retrieved correctly and you suspect that it is reindexing, you can test that, first of all, by choosing the Index Now feature that you can access through the discovery layer. And if it in fact looks like there are index points that didn't get indexed, you can request a reindexing at any time just by entering a support center ticket, and they'll schedule it. They'll let you know when it's done. Okay, so back to our point 17. Again, these were all pretty much items that came from the public libraries. So I think overall, after I read through these, I don't think that there's anything that should harm anything that currently is in production, but be aware of it tomorrow. The last thing about tomorrow, when you come in and start work tomorrow, be sure to clear cache and to reload your browser. Some of these, if you don't do that, some of the changes they won't work correctly, is the basic answer. So please be sure to do that. Jane did add that into her message that she sent out to Waldo support, but if you did not see that message, this is your reminder. Okay. And I think that brings us to the end of the agenda that I have for today. Is there anything else that anybody wants to bring up and talk about or ask about? Tracy, you want to speak, or do you just want to? Okay.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, I
yeah,
can.
took a moment to unmute everything. Yeah, and I'm not sure if you said this and I just missed it. I have the document open that you sent, the system preferences changes in Bibliovation 6. And I scrolled down to what is maybe page 3, where it says removed system preferences. And did you say anything about those in this or another meeting? Are these redundant, or are they actually gone? Like, I look at OPAC quick search filter, which I know is one of the ones that we use. And is that just redundant, or it's somewhere else now? What's going on with that? And apologies if you said it and I just haven't heard it.
No, this, I don't recall if I talked about the remove system preferences when I introduced this originally. These are ones that I found by going through the release notes, and I haven't actually verified that they are no longer in the current system preferences. So I figure if LibLine puts in the release notes that these are no longer active system preferences, we can rely on it. Now, like the OPAC quick search filter, that is still there, but it's, I think that it's called something different now. I think that the OPAC part of that, I think it's just a quick search filter now.
Okay, that's all I needed to know, and I probably would have figured that out if I had gone and looked, but I opened it while we were on the call and was taking a look at it. So, and there were some other things that, again, I would expect we would have, and if it's just name tags or redundancies, that's fine.
Yeah, and the primary thing in this one that I found is that pretty much all of the XSLT coding or all of the XSLT system preferences are now gone. Now, they may still be in the displays when you look at them online, but they are gone. There will be no reference to them in the coding behind it.
Okay, great. Thanks. I'm going to mute myself again. Thank you.
Okay. Ben, you want to talk about cascading headings?
No, it's fine.
Okay, is there anything else that anybody wants to bring up today? Okay, seeing nothing else being added into the chat, I'm done for today. I'll have the recording on YouTube before the end of today. It'll take maybe about 45 minutes for me to get that done, but I'll update the meeting page with the URL for the recording so that when you check on it later today, you'll see what the URL is, and if you want to listen to this again, or if you want someone else at your library to listen to it, you will have that opportunity. So everybody have a good weekend, and we meet again in 2 weeks, which is December 19th. Thank you all.